But in the interim, this takes long. Unraveling globalization takes a long time. This isn't just an overnight fix. And in the interim, prices will go.
Donald Trump's tariffs aren't just bad policy. They might be the dumbest economic move we've seen in a generation. They're tanking markets, rattling industries, and worst of all, dragging out the most disingenuous Republican talking points I've ever heard. And let's be honest, the defenses of these tariffs are downright embarrassing. But here's the good part. One of those dishonest arguments got absolutely shredded on the Senate floor. Who did the shredding? Senator Bernie Sanders. And the target, a Trump-aligned trade rep trying to spin economic nonsense into patriotic duty. What followed was a brutal, honest, and frankly therapeutic takedown that I can't wait to show you. Before we roll that clip though, a quick ask. If you're enjoying this kind of content, please give this video a like. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. It seriously helps out and means a lot. Alright, back to it. Before we show Bernie in action, let's take a look at one of the lies he tore apart, straight from Howard Lutnick. Here's the clip.
But in the interim, this takes long. Unraveling globalization takes a long time. This isn't just an overnight fix. And in the interim, prices will go up. You even hear from the president himself, there will be short-term pain. We're going to see in the next few days likely prices going up at the grocery store. What do you say to those Americans who put Donald Trump in office to lower prices, not raise them?
So energy prices down, interest rates down,
right,
your mortgage costs down, right? These things are energy. The price at the gas pump lower, oil down 6-7%. Why aren't you talking about the fact that oil in the gas pump is going to come smashing down? No tax on tips, no tax on overtime,
right,
no tax on Social
That's not even in effect yet.
These
no
are
tax on
all
tips.
coming
I just want to drill down on
These
prices
are all coming now.
Because as you well know, Secretary, a lot of Americans put Donald Trump in office because they were unhappy with prices at the grocery store.
The Trump administration is desperately trying to spin a positive narrative around its reckless tariff policy. The first claim, that tariffs will somehow revive American manufacturing. But let's be real, that's not going to happen, especially when Trump is actively dismantling the very investments in manufacturing that were made under the Biden administration. We recently spoke with Congressman Greg Landsman about this, and he didn't mince words. The second myth Trump and his allies are pushing is that tariffs will lower prices. They've even pointed to dropping oil prices as proof. But that's not because of smart policy. It's because a recession is looming. Markets are reacting to fear, not stability. Take the recent praise conservatives gave to Ford Motor Company for lowering vehicle prices. The claim that it was thanks to Trump's tariffs. The truth, Ford is slashing prices because they know Americans are about to stop buying cars altogether. They're trying to clear out inventory before demand crashes, not celebrate a booming economy. This entire tariff narrative is built on lies. Lies that could cost people their jobs, their homes, and their retirement savings. And one of the most dangerous lies? Bernie Sanders called it out directly and powerfully on the Senate floor. Watch this takedown. It's one of the most honest and cutting responses to Trump's economic chaos yet.
Let me begin by saying, as I suspect you know, that I am not a great fan of unfettered free trade. I helped lead the effort when I was in the House against NAFTA and against permanent normal trade relations with China. I will never forget a visit that I made to the Macadillo area in Mexico, where I saw brand new factories and literally Mexican workers living in cardboard boxes. And the result, of course, was the loss of hundreds of thousands of jobs, good-paying jobs in this country, transferring them to Mexico where people work for horrendous wages. That is the type of trade policy which I detest. But I want to move to an area to talk about the legal basis of what President Trump has done. President Trump said, Mr. Greer, that he had no choice in terms of Canada. And I live 50 miles away from the Canadian border. He had no choice but to bypass Congress and to impose an emergency 25% tariff on Canada to stop, quote, the massive, end quote, amount of fentanyl and, quote, the millions and millions of undocumented immigrants coming from the northern border. Unfortunately, that's a lie. The truth is that the U.S. Customs and Border Protection reported just 43 pounds of fentanyl was seized at the Canadian border last year, representing just 0.2% of the total. Now, we could agree that 1 pound of fentanyl is too much. But if 0.2% constitutes an emergency, my guess is illegal drugs are coming in from every country in the world. And that gives the President of the United States incredible power to determine tariffs. Further, he said he talked about millions and millions of undocumented immigrants coming from Canada. In fact, last year there were 24,000 people, not millions and millions. First question, really, we can argue about tariffs, but why does the president have to lie all of the time in order to make his point?
So, Senator, I would just refute that when the president is talking about the nature of the emergency we have. I mean,
Could you talk a little bit closer into the mic, please?
Certainly. Senator, I would just say, I think you need to look at what the president issued in terms of the order for the legal basis for what we're doing, right? I mean, the president very rightly hit on this issue of fentanyl migration coming from northern southern borders, and it's a real emergency.
Drugs are a real emergency. 0.2%. You can then argue illegal drugs come from every country in the world. If you declare that as an emergency, you're giving the President of the United States unbelievable power. Let me go on that point. Let me mention to you what you probably know. 7 Republicans have joined a number of Democrats on legislation reasserting Congress's ability to play an active role in trade and tariffs. That, on the Republican side, was led by Senator Grassley. And he said, and I quote, "For too long, Congress has delegated its clear authority to regulate interstate and foreign commerce to the executive branch, et cetera, et cetera." He wants to reassert Congress's constitutional role and ensure Congress has a voice in trade policy, end of quote. In the last 2 weeks, all we have seen is reports in the newspaper. Congress has not had 1 ounce of authority in determining tariff policy. Do you think Congress should be completely left out of the process? Or does the president have emergency power to do anything he wants with regard to tariffs?
Senator, my staff has had over 200 meetings with congressional offices in the past 2 months to consult. The president's been very transparent about what he wants to do on tariffs. Congress delegated a law to him to take this action.
Mr. Greer, you can have all the meetings you want. You and I had a nice meeting. But at the end of the day, the president did exactly what he wanted to do without any discussion, formal discussion with members of Congress. He could make recommendations to Congress, that's for sure. Do you really think that he has the power under an emergency degree to reorder the trade world, global trade policy, without any input from the United States Congress?
Sir, Congress gave him this law where if he determines a national emergency, he can take appropriate action to regulate imports. That's what he's done.
And you think it's a national emergency that 0.2% of fentanyl coming from Canada constitutes a national emergency?
Sir,
do you?
The president has determined that
do you?
Canada,
I'm asking you.
You're asking me about drug policy. So I agree with the president. If you have China and Canada and Mexico putting drugs into this country at different levels, then that's an emergency. We have to deal with it.
Look, we're not going to argue about the danger of drugs. 43 pounds of fentanyl. On that basis, the president can declare an emergency with any country on earth and take unlimited power. That's called authoritarianism.
If this was really about fentanyl coming across the southern or even the Canadian border, you'd think the logical next step would be to strengthen partnerships with those countries. You'd think we'd be investing in advanced fentanyl screening and tighter enforcement. Funny thing is, that's exactly what was included in the bipartisan border deal that Donald Trump and Republican leaders actively worked to kill. So what happened to that deal? What happened to the legislation that actually could have made a difference? Republicans tanked it, because if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris had that win, if they had real legislative progress on border security to campaign on, that would have ruined the GOP's fear-based narrative. And Trump, the guy who never shuts up about the border crisis, he had the chance to back a serious policy solution. Did he take it? Of course not. Because they're not trying to solve the issue, they're trying to exploit it. It's always the same pattern. Performative outrage, zero action, and the cost, real people, real communities. As Senator Raphael Warnock powerfully reminded us, these lies aren't just political, they're deadly. Watch this important moment from Senator Warnock's speech. A call out we all need to hear. Add clip here.
About what this is. This is a tax on hardworking families. These tariffs will be a $3,800 tax increase on working people. I want you to think about that and the implications of that at a time when a third of all Americans have only $500 in their savings account. And so people will literally be crushed by what is happening in real time. I can tell you that as I talk to Georgians, they want help. They want a government that understands the challenges of ordinary people. They want help paying for their groceries. They're concerned about the price of saving and buying a house and buying a car. Make no mistake, tariffs will only raise costs and make life harder for middle-class people and for hardworking families. Ironically, the president who ran on a platform to lower people's costs is taxing hardworking people, middle-class people, the working poor, while at the same time they are laser focused on giving a tax cut to the richest of the rich. I think that's wrong-headed. I think it's Robin Hood in reverse. They're stealing from the poor in order to give to the rich. And the people of Georgia and all across our country deserve better than this. In contrast, my colleagues and I are focused on lowering costs. And that's why tomorrow I'm proud that I'll be joining Senator Bennett to introduce the American Family Act, which would put money back into the pockets of families by nearly doubling the child tax credit. 3 months after I arrived here in the Senate, I'm very proud that in the American Rescue Plan, one of the first things I was able to do was to deliver on the expanded child tax credit. It literally cut child poverty almost in half. But we only did it for 6 months because we could not get it extended. We need to reorder our priorities in this institution. We need to pass tax relief for children and for the families that are raising these children. And we need to make sure that the wealthy pay their fair share. Congress has a role in it, and my Republican colleagues need to decide, are they standing with Donald Trump and co-president Elon Musk? Are they standing with ordinary people?
It's also important to point out, beyond the fact that Donald Trump clearly doesn't care about the people these tariffs will hurt, that his focus isn't on working class Americans. It's on billionaires. Always has been. This entire tariff scheme still ties back to one thing: protecting the ultra wealthy. Trump's carve-outs and exemptions won't be for the small businesses struggling to survive. They'll be for the billion-dollar corporations that can afford to fly into Mar-a-Lago, write massive checks to Trump's PACs, or donate millions to his so-called presidential library. Small businesses, they don't get that kind of access. They don't get a seat at the table. They just get the bill. And that bill comes in the form of more price gouging, more inflation, and more economic pain for everyday people. That's Trump's tariff plan in action. And even if he suddenly reversed course tomorrow and said no more tariffs, the damage is already done. The inflation we're feeling now, the price hikes, they aren't going anywhere. Once corporations get you used to paying more, they're not going to slash prices out of goodwill. Trump's already locked us into long-term consequences. We may be dealing with the fallout for years, hopefully not decades, but the scars will be there. That's why we keep speaking out. That's why this show exists, to break through the noise, to call out the lies, and to stand up for the truth. So if you've made it this far, thank you. Drop a blue heart in the comments to let us know you're with us. Don't forget to leave a like, and if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button to support the work we're doing here every single day. Until next time, stay informed, stay sharp, and stay loud.